Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Feng Shenghu, the Richard G. Engelmann Dean of Arts and Sciences, and I'm also a professor in the Department of Biology and the Department of Earth, Environmental, and Planetary Sciences. I'm so honored to welcome all of you to the installation of Lúcia Lohmann as the George Engelmann Professor of Botany in Arts and Sciences at Washington University. As many of you already know, I am incredibly proud to have Lúcia as a new member of our faculty. And I'm just thrilled that she has chosen to return to St. Louis in this pivotal joint appointment between the Missouri Botanical Garden and WashU. As a fellow biologist studying ecosystem change through geological history, I can confidently tell you that Lúcia is a true rock star in our field. This is an exciting day for me personally, for the garden, for WashU, and a significant moment for the entire St. Louis region. And now, before I go any further, I'd like to take a moment to recognize several members of Lúcia's family who are with us today. We are delighted to have you in the room today. Her husband, Nemer, their daughters, Alice, Flora, and Maria. And joining us virtually are her mother, Beatrice Lohmann, her brother, Federico Lohmann. Would Lúcia's family members in the room please stand to be recognized? We're so happy you are here with us to help mark this special occasion. And a warm welcome to your family and all of those joining today's live stream as well. I also like to thank my colleagues, Mike Stern and David Campbell, and the entire board of trustees of the Missouri Botanical Garden for the opportunity to participate in the search that brought Lúcia back to St. Louis. While I certainly can't take credit, I like to think that Arts and Sciences and our long-standing commitment to world-class research and education played a role in drawing her back to the garden in St. Louis and WashU. It's only been a few months, but the excitement around Lúcia's arrival has already sparked meaningful momentum on our campus. In just a few minutes, Professor Jonathan Lossos will share more about her distinguished career and leadership, including her extensive research and conservation career and conservation work on tropical biodiversity in Latin America. Her body of work explores the very creation and nature of biodiversity in the Amazon basin over the last 30 million years. She's a pioneer in the field and at the garden, where she is the first woman to hold the position of president. Let's take a moment to recognize that historic achievement. Lúcia is joining us at a pivotal moment for plant science in St. Louis. People often talk about how our region's premier institutions, the garden, our universities, forest park, and our civic organizations make this region so vibrant and strong. And they are right. But what truly sets us apart isn't just the presence of these institutions individually. It is how they connect and collaborate to strengthen our region and make a broader impact on the world. And Lúcia is a perfect example of that connective tissue. Through her scholarship and leadership, she has bridged the University of Missouri St. Louis, where she received her PhD, and the Garden, where she was a postdoctoral fellow at the Center for Conservation and Sustainable Development. And here at WashU, she is an exciting new addition to our long tradition of excellence in plant science within the Department of Biology. Her enthusiasm has begun to play a major role in revitalizing partnerships between the Garden and other research institutions, further strengthening St. Louis's position as a hub for life sciences and biological conservation. And one of those exciting connections is the Living Earth Collaborative, a research partnership unlike anything else in the country and perhaps in the world. This collaboration brings together WashU, the Garden, and the St. Louis Zoo, leveraging the expertise, talents, and resources of these three prestigious institutions to become a global leader in biodiversity research, education, and conservation. I'm sure co-directors of the Living Earth Collaborative, Cricket Sands and Jonathan Lossos, both in the room today, share my excitement for the momentum Lucia's leadership brings to this important endeavor. While we are here today to celebrate Lucia, I would be remiss not to mention the significance of adding not just one, but two world-renowned tropical biodiversity scientists to our biology faculty this year. In addition to Lucia's distinguished professorship, I am thrilled to announce that we have also hired Toby Pennington, who is sitting right in front here, who holds a joint appointment with the Garden and WashU as the inaugural David and Dorothy Kemper Professor in the Department of Biology, which we'll celebrate in just about a month, next month, November. So this powerhouse duo will be a game changer for WashU, the Garden, and the St. Louis region as a whole. And of course, we will not be here without the namesake of this professorship, George Engelmann, a medical doctor and a botanist who played a major role in turning the Garden into the scientific powerhouse it is today. As a close advisor to Garden founder Henry Shaw, he convinced Shaw to make the Garden a research institution in addition to a beautiful public space. This made him something of an early visionary, exploring how that connective tissue of scholarship could benefit the Garden and the region. Engelmann was a member of the WashU faculty from 1856 until his death in 1884. His plant collections remain at the Missouri Botanical Garden with a number of species bearing his name. Engelmann has also been credited with playing a little-known role in rescuing the French wine industry in the late 1800s when he helped Europe beat an invasive insect from North America by arranging to collect and send over wild vines from Missouri that were resistant to the bug. So, if you're toasting Lucia tonight with a good European wine, you may want to say thank you to George Engelmann. Henry Shaw created this professorship in 1885, a year after Engelmann's death. At the same time, he established WashU's Henry Shaw School of Botany, which was later integrated into our Department of Biology. We are grateful for the legacies of George Engelmann and Henry Shaw, and for our many supporters whose generous gifts help us build and grow our world-class faculty, including Lucia. Lucia, I've had many opportunities to interact with you since you arrived in St. Louis, And I can tell all of you that Lucia has just jumped right in with enthusiasm and generosity, sharing her expertise, meeting faculty and students, giving talks, and participating in campus events. I am confident the connections she's generating will strengthen our academic and environmental ecosystems for generations to come. With that, I now want to invite my colleague, Jonathan Lossos, to come up to the podium, and Jonathan will formally introduce our honoree today. Jonathan, please.
Well, it's a huge delight to welcome Dr. Lúcia Lohmann back to Washington University in St. Louis. As you just heard, Dr. Lohmann is doing double duty here. Not only is she the 8th president in the Missouri Botanical Garden's 165-year history, and as we just heard, the first woman to hold that position, but she is also the 8th holder of the George Engelmann Professorship in Botany, in which she will officially, I think, start sitting in that chair today. That she holds both positions is no coincidence. The Engelmann Professorship was endowed by Henry Shaw. At the same time, he financed the founding of the Henry Shaw School of Botany at WashU, as Dean Hu just told us about. And it is notable, I think it's somewhat been forgotten, that the School of Botany was the only school in Washington University's history that was founded with a specific charge to promote research. Perhaps that's the new School of Public Health as well, but the School of Botany until that was the only one. And indeed, the first non-honorary doctorate degree ever granted by Washington University was in the field of botany in 1885 to Dr. Anna Isabel Mulford. The first holder of the Engelmann Professorship was William Trelease, who was installed, if they had events like this back then, also in 1885. 4 years later, when Henry Shaw died, Trelease became the first president of the Missouri Botanical Garden. Actually, they called them directors back then. And ever since, the president has been the Engelmann Professor. But enough of institutional history. Let's talk about Lucia's history, in which, as you've already gathered, St. Louis played a major role. Lucia began her career in her native Brazil, earning her undergraduate degree in biology from the University of Sao Paulo, where she documented the biodiversity of the Amazon basin. However, it was then that she had her first stint in St. Louis. After graduating from college, she moved here to continue her education at the University of Missouri St. Louis, earning both her master's and doctoral degrees in their wonderful Ecology, Evolution, and Systematics program. During that time, Lucia took graduate courses right here at Washington University, including one, I'm proud to say, taught by me. After finishing her doctorate, she moved across town to take up a postdoctoral position at the Missouri Botanical Garden as a fellow with the Center for Conservation and Sustainable Development. During this time, her work focused on the geography and evolution of the trumpet creeper plant family, technically referred to as the Bignoniaceae. Among her accomplishments, Lucia has described 13 plant species new to science, as well as having an Amazonian species she discovered named in her honor, Distictella lohmanniae. So following her first time in St. Louis, she went on to serve back at the faculty of the Department of Botany at the University of Sao Paulo. Subsequently, she moved to the University of California at Berkeley, where she was a professor in the Department of Integrative Biology, as well as director of the university's 2 herbaria. And then, as we all know, she arrived here at the beginning of this year. Lucia recently concluded terms as the executive director for the Association for Tropical Biology and Conservation, and as the president of the International Association for Plant Taxonomy. She also has been elected a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. As you can see, Lucia brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in this position. We are incredibly fortunate to have such an internationally renowned botanist and conservationist at the helm of one of the world's leading centers of botanical scholarship, as well as being our colleague here at Washington University. So I am delighted to welcome Lucia back home as the new George Engelmann Professor of Botany and President of the Missouri Botanical Garden.
So you all see this beautiful medallion here? So the front says George Engelmann, Professor of Botany, Washington University in St. Louis, 1853, Arts and Sciences. And the back say Lúcia Lohmann, October 16th, 2025. Lúcia, I present you with this beautiful medallion as a symbol of your new appointment as a distinguished professor at Washington University. And as everybody at WashU knows, so I was going to say, it's everybody at WashU knows very well, the expectation is you keep the arms 24/7 every day. And if it gets too heavy, your daughters can help you. I think we're supposed to stay here for some pictures. Sean, how would you want us to stand? Okay?
Wow, this is special. Thank you so much, Feng Sheng and Jonathan, for the incredible words and also for the incredibly warm welcome to St. Louis. And really seeing so many colleagues and friends and students and mentors and family members here really makes this day even more meaningful to me. And this is actually a moment to, one of those rare moments, I would say, in life when we pause, reflect on our journeys, and really think about all the steps and all the people that have supported us throughout the journey of life. And I feel like it's also an important chance to consider my path and my journey in botany, and also think about how the field of botany itself actually evolved side by side with my career. So in order to share some reflections about my journey, I decided to keep it in 4 chapters so I can not go over my 20 minutes. And so I will start by talking about my first chapter, which I'm calling Inspired by Nature, Roots of Discovery and Lessons from Morphology. The second chapter is Becoming a Botanist, the Tree of Life and Molecular Revolution. The third, Mentorship and Collaboration, Integrative Science and the Web of Discovery. And I will finalize with a chapter on Stewardship and Purpose, the living syntheses of botany in service of life. And the first chapter began in 1973, when I was born, at a time when the world was quite different from today. I grew up in São Paulo, Brazil, surrounded by nature in a household of 5. My dad, my mom, my 2 older brothers, and myself. Plants always caught my attention and certainly inspired me. And during those years, science was really changing fast. New tools like electron microscopy and early computers were really reshaping biology, while new theories like cladistics and plate tectonics were transforming our understanding of how life and landscapes evolved together. For botanists, this meant not just thinking of species as individual entities, but actually as pieces of a larger puzzle, really as clues to the history of life on Earth. In Brazil, the Amazon basin was in the spotlight, and the Flora Amazonica project emerged in response to the rapid deforestation that was caused by the Trans-Amazonica highway that was built at the time. The goal of the Flora Amazonica project and many other flora projects that were being launched all over the world was to document species diversity before they disappeared. And in those days, many new species were being described, and herbaria and taxonomy were really expanding. This was also a time for transformation in plant systematics. So classification systems, they were beginning to shift from pure morphology to evolutionary thinking. And plant biogeography, inspired by the seminal work by Dr. Peter Raven and Daniel Axelrod, actually became a historical science where plant distributions were connected to continental drift in the light of the recent theories of plate tectonics. And it was within this context that the term biodiversity was actually coined, and that conservation biology emerged as a field responding to biodiversity loss. So, in sum, the 70s and 80s, they were really marking a turning point. For me personally, these were years of curiosity and wonder when I learned to observe, to ask questions, and to see connections between people and nature. For botany, it was a time when we started to move from description to explanation, from isolation to integration, and from naming species to understanding their stories. And it was in this context that I decided to pursue a career in biology. And this is when the second chapter begins. In 1991, when I entered the University of São Paulo to study biology, and right away started my research working on fungi, which in those days we still thought were plants. Soon after, I joined a project to document the flora of Brazil's Espinhaço range, and this is when I selected the plant family Bignoniaceae for my studies. And this was a decision that would actually shape the rest of my career. My undergraduate research took me to the Amazon, where I helped to produce the first illustrated field guide of the plants of Central Amazonia. For this guide, we described and photographed more than 1,500 species of Amazonian plants, and the guide of the Duque Reserve remains as a reference until today. And it was this research that actually brought me for the first time to the Missouri Botanical Garden to study Al Gentry's Bignoniaceae collections. During that same visit, the first molecular phylogeny of flowering plants was published in the Annals of the Missouri Botanical Garden, marking the beginning of the molecular revolution. I was really captivated by these findings and decided that I ought to come back to St. Louis for graduate school. And so I did. In 1996, I returned to St. Louis to join the graduate program in ecology, evolution, and systematics at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, where I worked under the supervision of Dr. Stoby Kellogg and Peter Stevens, and also under the guidance of Drs. Charlotte Taylor, Peter Raven, Betty Loisel, and Mick Richardson, who are all members of my PhD thesis committee. And during my 8 years in St. Louis, I conducted research at the intersection of traditional botany, continuing to study plant morphology and produce floristic treatments, while diving right into molecular systematics. And while I was in graduate school, the first angiosperm phylogeny classification was published, which classified plants by their ancestry rather than their overall morphology and appearance. And these were really exhilarating times for us botanists, and my very own PhD mentors were very closely connected to this project. This was also an incredibly vibrant time for graduate studies in botany in St. Louis, with students from all over the world conducting research together. The rise of DNA sequence data and new analytical tools were redefining how we explore the tree of life. In my own PhD work, produced the first DNA-based evolutionary tree of the tribe Bignoni, a foundational framework for the family. This tree allowed us to reinterpret plant morphology and also to propose a brand new classification system that only recognized monophyletic genera recognized by unique morphological synapomorphies. This work resulted in many taxonomic changes, including 185 new plant names. As part of my PhD work, I also created a distribution database that allows us to map species distributions, study their biogeographic history, and later identify priorities for new surveys and conservation across the Americas. And this second chapter ends with my PhD graduation, which, as Jonathan mentioned, was followed by a postdoc at the Missouri Botanical Garden. In the 1990s and early 2000s, there was another turning point. For me, these were my most formative years as a botanist, when curiosity became a purpose, and when my appreciation for nature became a career. For botany, it was the time when DNA reshaped classifications and biodiversity informatics opened new ways for us to understand global plant distribution patterns. And this leads to the third chapter. And this chapter begins in 2004, when I returned to the University of São Paulo, or USP as we call it, as a botany professor. After years of learning from extraordinary people and scientists in St. Louis, this was my time to go back and help train the next generation of botanists in Brazil. These were transformative years for biology. Genomics, bioinformatics, and geospatial tools were opening unprecedented opportunities for us to explore the origin and evolution of biodiversity. Global networks like Herbaria linked Herbaria data and researchers across continents. And at USP, I was starting to build a research group dedicated to reconstructing the giant puzzle of neotropical biodiversity, focusing on the Amazon basin and using the Bignoniaceae as a model group. Each student chose a genus for in-depth study. There's Jackson right there. And together, we built a comprehensive framework of this entire clade, which really turned it into a true model for integrative botany in a synthesis that would not be possible by any single person alone. Our research combined fieldwork, monographic work, morphological and anatomical work, detailed studies of the development of specific traits, chloroplast genomics, and nuclear target capture data sets. Students investigated everything about plants, all the way from their morphological basis until their genetic basis of individual morphological traits. And through this incredible collaborative effort, we conducted integrative studies on the systematics, ecology, evolution, and biogeography of the Bignoniaceae. And we discovered how different features changed through time, like wood anatomy, which remained stable over millions of years, or flower morphology, and the tendrils of lianas, which evolved very rapidly and diversified extensively throughout their history. Students also studied how species function in nature and even assessed the heritability of individual traits in greenhouses. And together, we studied the adaptive value of traits, we understood adaptations to dry and wet environments, and assess the invasiveness of individual species by linking species traits to global patterns of species distribution and abundance. Overall, our detailed work on the Bignoniaceae allowed us to understand how species evolve, adapt, and function in nature. And as our understanding deepened with the Bignoniaceae, a broader question emerged. How did the Amazon's extraordinary species diversity arise? To answer this question, we expanded our studies beyond plants to include birds, primates, and butterflies. We reconstructed their evolutionary history, studied the geology of the Amazon basin, as well as the climatology and past vegetation in the region. This research project literally led to hundreds of publications and white papers and a comprehensive synthesis on the evolution of Amazonian biodiversity. As this project was getting to a close, another project was beginning, one that aimed to unravel the Amazonian highlands in search of new species. This was a collaborative project led by a prominent Brazilian biologist, Miguel Trefo Rodrigues, who is also one of my mentors since my undergraduate studies. And through this project, we explored the Serra do Imeri back in 2022, uncovering many new species of plants, birds, frogs, and lizards, even a new anoles. Soon after, I joined the University of California, Berkeley as a professor in biology and director of the herbarium. This was an intellectually vibrant period of my career that broadened my vision for integrative science due to Berkeley's academic excellence, natural history museums, and innovative spirit. Things were very busy during this decade in the lab, the herbarium, doing field work, and teaching, and also at home. I definitely had my hands full. Once again, these 2 decades were marked by deep growth. For me, these were years of mentorship, collaboration, and scientific growth, when I saw science through the eyes of my students, and when I witnessed knowledge through our collective efforts. For botany, this was an era of integration, when genomics, geospatial tools, and big data connected processes across scales and disciplines, revealing the evolutionary pathways that shape entire biotas. It was within this context of integration, mentorship, and discovery that I came to see botany not only as a science, but as a shared enterprise in service to life. One that not only helps us understand the past, but better prepares us for the future. This brings us to our final chapter, one that is not about the past, but it's about the future. A chapter of unprecedented possibilities, where centuries of accumulated knowledge converge with new technologies and a renewed sense of purpose. 2 words define this moment for me: stewardship and purpose, both of which are central to the missions of both the Missouri Botanical Garden and Washington University in St. Louis. At the garden, stewardship means more than caring for plants. It means honoring a 165-year legacy and ensuring that it flourishes for generations to come. By preserving our collections, cultivating partnerships around the globe, and believing that science can be a force for good, we give purpose to our stewardship. We guide our work to discover, understand, preserve, restore, and sustain life on Earth. At WashU, stewardship takes the form of education and discovery, empowering minds to question, explore, and innovate. By transforming knowledge into solutions that uplift both people and the planet. Together, these two institutions combine science, education, and action to illuminate the connections between plants, people, and our future. Today, we have tools that our predecessors could only dream of. Genome sequencing, AI, big data, and remote sensing, which together allow us to explore life from the molecular to the planetary level. What once would take a lifetime can now be explored in a few days. Yet, our greatest challenge remains transforming information into understanding and transforming understanding into action. This chapter is about integrative botany, a vision uniting molecular, morphological, ecological, and social dimensions of life to reveal not only how plants evolve, but how they sustain the planet. And herbaria have a vital role to play. Herbaria are more dynamic than ever. They are living laboratories where digital records, DNA, and ecological data converge to document biodiversity, monitor change, guide restoration, and discover new species before they vanish. But the future of botany actually depends on people, on the next generation of scientists, educators, and citizens who recognize plants as central to our shared future. Our discoveries only gain full meaning once they reach society, when they inspire wonder, when they inform decisions, and when they spark collective actions. In some ways, communicating science is equal as important as conducting it. Plants hold the keys to a resilient and generative world. These are keys capable of restoring forests, greening cities, and providing food, medicines, and energy in harmony with nature. The more we understand plants, the better we can design systems that support both people and the planet. The future of botany lies in creativity, innovation, collaboration, meaningful partnerships, purpose, and care. The very same values that define the work that we will carry forward into the next century. As I come full circle, I realize that every chapter of my life has been part of something much larger than myself. Botany has been my lens to understand the world, and collaboration has been my way of contributing. The journey continues, now rooted in a deeper purpose, to ensure that the knowledge we cultivate serves life in all of its forms. In the end, to understand plants is to understand life, and to understand life, it's to understand ourselves. When we nurture curiosity and connection, we keep the world alive. And when we invest in plants, we invest in our future. This journey is a shared story constructed by countless hands, multiple minds, and many hearts that have made it possible. Thank you so much for every single person who has been part of this journey with me. May we continue to grow like the plants that inspire us, grounded in curiosity, strengthened by collaboration, and hopeful for the future. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia, for that fascinating presentation. It's the most information-rich and visually stimulating presentation in 20 minutes I've ever had. So I think we already know Lucia is a great scientist and a great leader. Now we also know that Lucia is going to be a fabulous mentor and teacher. My newest aspiration is to take a class from Lucia. Especially, I need to convince her to take me to the Amazon basin. So let's thank Lucia again. And this concludes the formal portion of today's ceremony. Back there's plenty of food and drinks, and so please join us for the reception. Thank you again.